November 1st, 2023. Well, we got a lot of things going on here with respect to the Middle East situation, particularly Israel's attack on the Hamas positions in Gaza, which are kind of ongoing in a systematic fashion. Probably not as dramatic as some people thought, but they are systematically taking out targets, and I guess they took out a Hamas commander that was involved in the October 7th attacks. And so this is moving ahead. At the same time, of course, a lot of other things are going on behind the scenes here. We got a little dilemma here on the funding of a lot of things that's going on with Mike Johnson, the new Speaker of the House, has an interesting proposal to split up the funding between the Ukraine effort and the situation for aid to Israel for 14.3 billion. So his idea is to remove the um, uh, money that was going to be used to hire a whole bunch of IRS agents and to instead spend that money on the $14.3 billion aid package for Israel. So that's kind of his proposal, and of course the people on the Senate side and the leadership are both against that. And that would include, both Schumer and McConnell, who are big Ukraine war supporters, obviously. So anyway, so that's kind of the situation that's developing, and it'll be interesting to see what happens. I think the double dip of splitting it out and also trying to fund it with one of the Democrats' pet projects is going to end up, not passing the Senate as is. I think that's going to be a problem. I would, as much as I like the idea of cutting back some of this IRS stuff, and that's a whole different kind of issue. We could get into what's with that. I tend to think, though, that if you're really trying to split the two, and if that objective is to split the two in pieces and then have more leverage on the Ukraine side, my viewpoint is just have a clean bill for the Israeli aid and throw that over to the Senate while you're debating everything else, and hope that just goes ahead and passes. And then we can get into Ukraine, of course, which is a separate issue. So anyway, but if you like these videos, please give me a like. We could use it. And of course, ring the bell for notifications. And of course, subscribe if you haven't already. That would be appreciated. So yeah, getting on to the so that's kind of my recommendation, and then basically when you get down to the Ukraine budget, then we can start playing around with ideas like taking money from various spending programs and using it to fund it rather than going further in debt. And because I think that the idea here is to split it. Otherwise, they kind of all go together, and things kind of, well. Of course, on the other hand, I'm not sure to what degree Israel actually needs additional 14.3 billion at this time. I'm not sure what they're planning on using it for. Is it just to pay for the mobilized reserve troops and replenish some ammo stocks? Or I'm not sure. If somebody pulls a number out of the air like that, I'd kind of like to know what's in that number and why it's there. But anyhow, I think nonetheless, since that's in play, I'd say go ahead and appropriate that, and then we can worry about the other issue. Now, when it comes to Ukraine, I think the thing on that is that, first of all, ultimately, I think Ukraine aid is going to get passed whether we like it or not at some level. The question is, can we use it for something useful, or just want to make a big protest and then lose? Because after all, even in the House, there's a thing called a discharge petition, and ultimately, they probably could go ahead and pass it over the leadership if the Democrats and a few Republicans that are kind of on the fringes there decide to double cross us there. So that's kind of the way I see that. Now, what I think would be a good position, which I think might get some support, is of course also included in that is the desire to put some money for the border security. Now, the Biden version of that, of course, is simply fund his own current wave of illegal immigration project. And that's where I think I would like to link real border security and basically changes in the immigration laws, um, particularly because remember, even if you had control of both houses, the filibuster would probably normally prevent these changes from being made. But since the Ukraine thing is in play and is important, what I think that we should try to do is to basically add in language which would basically take away the president's right to let these people in the country. Right now, as I understand, there is in the law that the president has discretion to give amnesty to people, basically in emergency situations. Let's say there's some kind of a natural catastrophe or a war breaks out somewhere and where people are going to be persecuted or major human rights scenario. And essentially, what happens is that, but he's abused that power greatly and just said, I can let in any arbitrary number for any reason I want to, which is what he's doing. We got at least 6 million or more already allowed in, plus the gotaways that we haven't been able to get a hold of. A massive amount of what would normally be defined as illegal immigration. I think we should make it illegal again and basically greatly restrict the president's right to give amnesty. Perhaps simply a cap of a very limited number per year, maybe, plus anything beyond that would have to require congressional approval. And of course, since we have the filibuster in the House, in the Senate, and they have the majority in the House, we could block that and essentially shut down this whole process of giving amnesty to these people or any kind of work permits or anything. And then the next thing we need to do is to put in there is full funding to complete the border wall and any kind of additional, maybe hire additional border patrol agents to secure the border. And I think that language of that sort ought to be put in there. And there's some other things that were done with dissent decrees in the past. This is a little trick they play, where basically some activist group sues the government, and then the government that really is on the same side as the activist group says, "Yeah, we'll make an out-of-court settlement and agree to what they want." I remember the specific issues, but we should reverse those things legislatively too and pass laws that just change that. And that should be attached to the Ukraine aid and so forth. And then so essentially what we would do with that is we'd insist on that or we won't pass the Ukraine aid. And hopefully the Ukraine aid is so important to the Biden administration that they'll have to agree to these terms. After all, they've gotten millions and millions of people in the country already. So, okay, yes, you've got future voters in line because of this. If not the immigrants themselves and their children that are born here. I got that. And I'm not sure we want to go so far on this particular initiative to try to play with that because that gets into a court decision we might lose. So I think just stick to what the kind of things I'm talking about and put that in. And I think there's a chance you could actually get that passed. And at least it's not, rather than taking the position simply that, that you're absolutely refusing the Ukraine aid. And of course, the other issue is the exact amount. But of course, the thing on Ukraine is, and of course, my position on that is Ukraine needs to be given a warning. It's time to start negotiating with Russia to end the war. I don't think that just giving them cold turkey cutoff right now necessarily be a good idea because it might end up just simply collapsing the position and leading to a situation that would make us look bad as conservatives. I think rather, allow certain money to go through, but kind of try to send the message that this isn't unlimited and that basically, they need to get to negotiating with Russia now while there's still something to negotiate about. Now, getting on to the actual situation, which is kind of in Israel itself, and I think that we have to look at a situation here that's going to be very difficult for Israel. I think initially, they can go in there and definitely with air power and limited armored thrusts and take out certain terrorists. And I guess they have been able to actually rescue one hostage, which is another motivating factor. It'll be interesting to see whether the grand objective of ultimately completely destroying Hamas will be possible. Hopefully it is, but I think you have a large amount of, you know, international pressure building and that sort of thing. On the good side, and this is pretty crass politics, but it really is presenting a major problem for the Biden administration and the Democrats. Because in the Democrat Party, you have maybe 65% roughly of the Jewish vote, at least going into this, would vote Democrat. And then you also have most of your Muslim and Arab American vote, those that can vote are voting Democrat also. So by supporting Israel, then they're going to demotivate their Muslim supporters. And there's certain areas such as, for instance, Michigan and Minnesota where that's a significant factor in a close election. So this poses some real problems for them. Meanwhile, in your universities, you have all these this has gone beyond simply opposing Israel's policy into pure out and out anti-Semitism, and going away from the idea of simply supporting some basic Palestinian rights under a two-state concept, which has been thrown around a lot. A concept I think is largely non-viable, but nonetheless, to actual rank anti-Semitism. And we're now getting into terroristic threats. I think somebody at Cornell has just been arrested for making these threats. So, and this is also elevating the issue that, that all the Democrat lie about white supremacy and all. We're beginning to realize that the real threats to the Jews and to, other people like this, it's not what they say it is. It's actually various minority groups that are doing most of the threatening, and particularly the African American community and I suppose the Muslim community. So that's that's going to pose another dynamic on the Democrats. It's going to be problematic, I think. How far it goes, I don't know, but it's something that should be considered in all this. So for the moment, since Israel's actually managed to rescue, I guess, one hostage with their incursion, that gives some merit to the idea of continuing the incursions, because the price for a negotiated settlement would be perhaps the release of all Palestinian prisoners that Israel currently holds, and that's just setting the stage for another problem like we have right now. On the other hand, we've got Turkey acting up, and maybe Egypt to some extent acting up, and this could cause some longer-term threats. I know I've heard some of Colonel McGregor's viewpoints on it, which to me sounds a little bit, he's talking Armageddon and absolute disaster, and I don't know, Turkish submarines torpedoing U.S. naval vessels, and Pakistanis giving the Turks nuclear weapons to use against Israel if necessary. I mean, I think this is getting a little bit out of scope. I mean, obviously, like you say, admittedly a worst case scenario kind of. I doubt any of that's going to happen, because I've said in previous videos, I tend to think because except for Syria, almost all and of course Iran, but Iran is almost too far away to do anything more than launching missiles. And I don't know that they're going to get into that kind of a conflict. Because we don't know what would end up landing back on their country if they did that. The other thing you have to consider is that most of the other countries, Turkey, Jordan, Egypt, are all equipped with American weapons. And obviously, we're not going to provide logistic support for them waging a war against Israel. So they would start losing their support if they tried that. And I just don't see that really happening. I do think there could be some real diplomatic blowback, though. Turkey might, for instance, I don't know, kick our bases out of the country or something like that. There are real risks that things like this could happen, I think. I don't know if they will. But at the same time, I think that the U.S. position is, on the other hand, to provide humanitarian aid to the Gaza residents. Needless to say, that all that's needed by Hamas will be taken, of course, by Hamas, but they'll be fed and provide any medicine that they need, etc., obviously. But I think in practice, that's worth doing simply for diplomatic purposes, nothing, if not for humanitarian purposes. I think a little of both. It gives us cover to continue the operation and hopefully rescue more hostages and take out more terrorist leaders. Whether it really gets the full objective of completely knocking the thing out or not, I don't know. That's going to take some time, and we'll just have to see what develops in the meantime. But that's it would be a noble objective if we could do it. But like I said, the other aspect is so far Israeli casualties on these incursions have been relatively light. I think I've heard like 2 killed and 2 wounded, and this, which is a lot lower than what they were suffering back in the initial encounters on their own territory, which I think rose up to something as high as 300 killed in action. That's pretty high for them, and of course they've got more casualties than that on the Lebanese border. But so at any rate, that's kind of my assessment. I think that the process is ongoing. We've got forces going into the area, and at some point, I think we're going to have to take some serious action against these people that are shooting, missiles and rockets that are, and drones that are troop deployments in the area. There is a question of exactly why we have all these troops there. I think, I think if you just pull them out now, we're going to look very weak, and that'll only encourage more offensive operations. So I think we have to kind of stand our ground for the moment on that. At least this is over with anyhow. And that's kind of my view on that one. So at any rate, we'll have to see how the House does with their plan. I like the general idea of rescinding money appropriate for various Democrat pet projects and use it to fund these things rather than going further in debt. But on the other hand, I think on the Israeli thing, I'd go ahead with a clean bill on that one, just because it might force them to actually appropriate it, and then you really would be in a situation where you've got the Ukraine funding, but kind of hostage, because otherwise what you're going to get is a Senate bill with a full $105 billion or whatever it is for everything, and that's going to come over to the House, and then there'd be pressure to pass the whole thing as is. Of course, there's other things can be done at that, which we can discuss when and if that happens. But I think that's kind of my idea at the moment. We'll see how things happen. We certainly have a different leadership in the House, but we have to be careful that we don't end up being seen as just complete obstructionists. And remember that 45-day, we only have about 2 more weeks on that temporary thing, and the budget that we're going to be into another shutdown unless we pass another continuing resolution, which of course we don't like. And any attempt to cut budgets, of course, after you spend it all, you can't really cut it, if you know what I mean. So anyhow, that'll be it for this time. I'll post on Rumble, my backup channel, as well as here on YouTube, and of course the address is my social media accounts in the description below. So until next time.